Olivia Dawson trembled as her father's proclamation echoed through their modest parlor, the words striking her like physical blows. She was to be married in 1 week's time to Edgar Thornton, the wealthiest man in Sioux Falls, Dakota Territory, a man she had met precisely once, and who was 3 decades her senior. It was the spring of 1878, and at 20 years old, Olivia had foolishly believed her father valued her happiness above financial security. The drought had devastated their small ranch outside Sioux Falls, and with her mother gone 5 years now, there was no one to advocate on her behalf. "Father, please," she whispered, her voice breaking as she clutched the back of a chair for support. "I cannot marry Mr. Thornton. I do not love him." Harrison Dawson's weathered face hardened as he paced their small parlor. "Love has nothing to do with survival, Olivia. The bank will foreclose on our land if we cannot make payment by month's end. Thornton has offered to clear our debts entirely in exchange for your hand." "You're selling me," she said plainly, tears welling in her eyes. Her father winced but didn't deny it. "I'm ensuring we both have a future. Thornton can provide for you in ways I never could." "Did you not consider asking me first?" she demanded, her voice rising with the courage of desperation. "Have I no say in who I spend my life with?" "The arrangement has been made," her father replied, finality in his tone as he reached for his hat. "Thornton will call tomorrow to formalize the engagement. I expect you to receive him properly." After he left for town, Olivia sank to her knees, letting tears flow freely. Edgar Thornton was Sioux Falls' most prominent businessman and its most notorious. Rumors of his cruel treatment of his first 2 wives circulated through town. Both had died under circumstances that raised eyebrows but never formal investigation. His connections ensured that. The sun was setting when Olivia wiped her tears and made her decision. She would not be sold like cattle to a man who viewed women as possessions. Packing a small bag with essentials and the few dollars she'd saved from selling eggs at the market, she scribbled a note to her father. "I cannot be the sacrifice for your debts. Forgive me." Under cover of darkness, she slipped away from the only home she'd ever known, her heart hammering against her ribs. With no clear destination beyond away, Olivia headed west, toward the setting sun and what she hoped would be freedom. By dawn, she had walked nearly 15 miles, her boots worn and feet blistered. The vast Dakota prairie stretched around her, beautiful and terrifying in its emptiness. When she spotted a lone rider approaching from the north, her first instinct was to hide, but exhaustion kept her rooted to the spot. The rider approached cautiously, and Olivia was struck by the quiet confidence in his posture. Atop a magnificent chestnut stallion sat a man perhaps 5 or 6 years her senior, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the morning sun. A weathered Stetson shaded eyes that studied her with concern rather than the suspicion she'd expected. "Miss," he called, reining his horse to a stop several paces away. "Are you in need of assistance?" His voice was deep but gentle, carrying a slight accent she couldn't place. Up close, she noticed the sun-weathered lines around his eyes suggested he smiled often, though his expression now was serious as he assessed her disheveled appearance. "I'm perfectly well," she lied, straightening her spine despite her exhaustion. "Just traveling." One eyebrow arched skeptically as he glanced pointedly at her city boots, now coated in dust and splitting at the seams. "Alone, on foot, in these parts?" Heat rose to her cheeks. "My situation is complicated." He nodded slowly as if deciding something. "Name's Flynn Sutherland. I run the Double S Ranch about 3 miles west of here." He gestured toward the horizon. "Whatever you're running from must be mighty troubling to have you out here alone." "I'm not running," she said automatically, then sighed at his knowing look. Olivia Dawson. And yes, I suppose I am. Flynn dismounted in a fluid motion that spoke of a lifetime in the saddle. He kept a respectful distance, removing his hat to reveal dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. Miss Dawson, these plains are no place for a woman alone. Wolves, rattlers, and men worse than both roam freely. I can offer you a ride to the nearest town, or—" He hesitated. "Or," she prompted, swaying slightly as fatigue threatened to overcome her. "My sister runs the household at Double S. We've got a spare room where you could rest, gather your bearings." He held up his hands when she tensed. "No obligations. You'd be our guest until you decide your next move. Alina would welcome the female company." Olivia studied him, searching for deceit in his clear gaze and finding none. Still, she'd learned to be cautious. "Why would you help a stranger?" A shadow crossed his face. "Let's just say I recognize the look of someone fleeing something they shouldn't have to endure." He offered a small, genuine smile. "Besides, my mother would haunt me from the grave if I left a lady stranded on the prairie." The mention of a sister eased Olivia's greatest concern. Though every warning bell her father had instilled in her clanged loudly, the alternative was continuing alone across unfamiliar territory with dwindling resources. "I accept your offer of shelter, Mr. Sutherland. Temporarily." Flynn nodded, clearly relieved. "Can you ride?" When she confirmed she could, he helped her mount before swinging up behind her, maintaining a respectful distance while still ensuring she wouldn't fall. As they rode toward his ranch, Olivia felt a curious mixture of fear and hope. She had escaped one fate, only to ride toward an unknown one, yet something about Flynn Sutherland's quiet strength gave her a sense of security she hadn't felt in years. The Double S Ranch emerged on the horizon. As the sun climbed higher, a sprawling property with a handsome two-story main house, several outbuildings, and vast stretches of grazing land. As they approached, Olivia could see a woman on the porch, her hand shielding her eyes as she watched their approach. "That's Alina," Flynn explained. "She's been running the household since our parents passed 5 years back." Alina Sutherland proved to be a frank, practical woman of about 30, with the same dark hair as her brother and eyes that missed nothing. After Flynn explained the situation, omitting the details, Olivia hadn't shared. Alina welcomed her with surprising warmth. "Any woman brave enough to strike out on her own rather than accept an unwanted situation is welcome here," she declared, ushering Olivia inside. "Flynn, see to her things while I show her to the guest room." The Sutherland home was comfortably appointed without being ostentatious, clearly the residence of people with means who valued function over display. The guest room Alina led her to was clean and bright, with a patchwork quilt covering a sturdy oak bed. "Rest," Alina instructed. "When you're ready, there's hot water for washing and I'll have food waiting. No questions asked until you're ready to share." Overwhelmed by this unexpected kindness, Olivia could only nod gratefully. When the door closed behind Alina, she sank onto the bed, her body finally acknowledging the toll of her journey. Despite her intention to remain vigilant, exhaustion claimed her almost immediately. She awoke to golden afternoon light streaming through lace curtains. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't recall where she was. Then the events of the past 24 hours rushed back, and she sat up with a gasp. How long had she slept? Would her father already be searching for her? After washing and changing into the fresh clothes Alina had left for her, Olivia made her way downstairs. She found her hostess in the kitchen, kneading bread dough with practiced efficiency. "There you are," Alina said with a smile, "feeling more human. Much thank you." Olivia twisted her hands nervously. I don't wish to impose on your hospitality. I should be moving on soon. Elena dusted flour from her hands. To where, if I may ask? You had no horse, little baggage, and were walking in the wrong direction for the nearest town. When Olivia remained silent, Elena softened her approach. I'm not prying out of nosiness, but concern. Flynn mentioned you seem to be fleeing something. We've helped others before, women in difficult situations. The kindness in the older woman's voice broke something in Olivia. The story spilled out. Her father's arrangement with Thornton, the debt, the expectation that she would sacrifice her future to save the ranch. Elena listened without interruption, her expression darkening only when Olivia mentioned Thornton's name. Edgar Thornton, she asked sharply. When Olivia nodded, Elena exchanged a meaningful look with Flynn, who had entered quietly during her story. You know him? Olivia asked. Flynn's jaw tightened. Everyone in the territory knows Thornton. His business practices are as ruthless as his personal reputation. He's destroyed more than one family by extending credit he knows can't be repaid, then collecting in ways that benefit him alone, Elena added. And the stories about his wives. She shuddered. Then you understand why I couldn't, Olivia began. You don't need to justify leaving, Flynn interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. No woman should be traded like property, regardless of the circumstances. A weight lifted from Olivia's shoulders at his words. Still, I've left my father to face the consequences alone, she said softly. Flynn's expression was contemplative. Your father made a choice too, Miss Dawson. He chose the easy path over your happiness. Flynn, his sister admonished, though without heat. Not everyone has our advantages. He acknowledged this with a nod before addressing Olivia again. You're welcome to stay until you've decided your next move. We have enough work for another pair of hands if you're inclined to earn your keep, though it's not required. I would prefer to contribute, Olivia said quickly. I'm not afraid of work. Elena smiled approvingly. Good. We'll start tomorrow. For now, eat something and rest more if needed. Over a simple but hearty dinner that evening, Olivia learned more about the Sutherlands. Their parents had established the ranch when Dakota territory was still wild and largely unsettled. After their deaths, their father from pneumonia, their mother from grief shortly after Flynn and Elena had not only maintained the ranch but expanded it. Unlike many of their neighbors, they'd survived both harsh winters and drought years through careful management and diversification. We raise cattle primarily, but also keep horses, grow enough crops for ourselves, and have recently begun breeding quality stock for other ranchers, Flynn explained. It's not the largest spread in the territory, but it's debt-free and productive. Flynn's being modest, Elena interjected. His innovations with irrigation and breeding have drawn attention from ranchers as far as Wyoming. We've had offers to buy Double S that would make us wealthy enough to live comfortably in Chicago or San Francisco. Flynn shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. Land means more than money out here. It's legacy and freedom both. Olivia was struck by the contrast between Flynn and her father. Both loved the land, but where Harrison Dawson had been willing to sacrifice his daughter to keep his, Flynn spoke of stewardship and responsibility without ownership or control. It was a perspective she hadn't encountered before. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, Olivia considered her situation. She had perhaps 3 days before her father's search would likely reach this far. She needed a plan beyond simply running. With no relatives to turn to and limited skills marketable beyond household management, her options were few. Morning brought clarity, if not comfort. After breakfast, Elena set her to helping with household tasks, and Olivia threw herself into the work, grateful for the distraction. You've done this before, Alina observed as Olivia expertly churned butter. "My mother taught me everything about running a household before she passed," Olivia explained. "Since then, I've managed our home while father handled the ranch business." Alina nodded thoughtfully. "It's valuable knowledge. Too many girls are raised to be ornamental rather than useful." By midday, Olivia had earned enough of Alina's trust to be left with preparing lunch, while the older woman attended to correspondence. She was setting the table when Flynn entered, bringing with him the scent of sunshine and open prairie. "Alina mentioned you're a capable cook," he said by way of greeting. "It smells wonderful." Olivia felt a peculiar warmth at his simple compliment. "It's just rabbit stew, nothing special." "Honest food made well is always special," he replied, washing his hands at the basin. As he dried them, he seemed to be considering something. "Miss Dawson, Olivia, please," she interrupted. "If I'm to stay even temporarily, formality seems unnecessary." He nodded, a smile briefly lightening his serious expression. "Olivia, I've been thinking about your situation. Word travels fast in these parts. Your father will likely hear of your presence here soon enough." Fear clutched at her heart. "I should leave then." "I don't wish to bring trouble to your door." "That's not what I'm suggesting," he said quickly. "In fact, I have a proposition that might solve several problems at once." Alina entered before he could elaborate, and the conversation shifted to ranch matters. Throughout lunch, Olivia caught Flynn watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. It wasn't improper, nothing in his manner had ever suggested impropriety, but there was an intensity to his gaze that made her increasingly curious about his unspoken proposition. Her opportunity to discover it came that afternoon when Alina announced she needed to visit a neighbor whose child was ill. "I'll be gone overnight," she explained. "Mrs. Peterson's youngest has a fever that won't break, and her husband's away driving cattle." After seeing her sister off, Flynn suggested Olivia join him for a tour of the property. "You should know the lay of the land if you're staying," he explained, helping her mount a gentle mare named Daisy. The double S was even more impressive than it had appeared at first glance. Well-maintained fences enclosed lush pastures where healthy cattle grazed. A creek running through the property had been cleverly dammed and channeled to create irrigation for fields of wheat and vegetables. Everywhere Olivia looked, she saw evidence of careful planning and hard work. "You've created something remarkable here," she said sincerely, as they paused atop a small rise overlooking the main buildings. Flynn's expression softened with pride. "My parents laid the foundation. Alina and I just built upon it." He dismounted and helped her down, gesturing toward a fallen log where they could rest. "Which brings me to what I wanted to discuss." Olivia sat, suddenly nervous, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I've been considering your situation," Flynn began, remaining standing, his hat in his hands. "By now, your father has likely discovered you're gone. Given his arrangement with Thornton, he'll be desperate to find you." She nodded, the reality of her predicament settling heavily once more. "Thornton is not a man who accepts losing, especially not something he believes he's purchased," Flynn continued, his voice hardening. "If he finds you, he'll either force the marriage or make examples of both you and your father." "I know," she whispered, "but I cannot return." "Nor should you," Flynn agreed firmly. "Which is why I have a suggestion. It's unconventional, and please understand you're free to refuse." He took a deep breath, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. "What if we were to marry?" Olivia gasped, certain she'd misheard. "I beg your pardon." Flynn rushed to explain. "A marriage in name, only a legal protection. As my wife, neither Thornton nor your father could compel you to return. Your father's debt would remain his problem, not yours. You would marry a woman you barely know to protect her from another man's claim." Olivia asked incredulously. I would offer legal protection to someone who deserves the freedom to choose her own path, he corrected. I make this vow to you now. Olivia, I would expect nothing from this arrangement that you weren't willing to freely give. You would have your own room, your own life here. If in time you wish to dissolve the marriage and move on, I would not stand in your way. Stunned, Olivia could only stare at him. Why would you do this? Flynn's expression turned distant, pain flickering across his features. I've seen what happens when women have no choices. My mother was fortunate to love my father, but her sister, he shook his head. My aunt was not so lucky. Her husband was a cruel man who treated her as property. When she finally fled with her children, the law sided with him. They were returned to his care. She took her own life rather than endure more of his treatment. He met Olivia's gaze directly. I cannot stand by while another woman faces such a choice. Olivia's mind raced. Marriage to a virtual stranger seemed reckless, yet Flynn had shown nothing but respect and kindness. And a marriage, even one in name only, would indeed provide legal protection that simply hiding never could. What would Alina think? She asked finally. It was partially her idea, Flynn admitted with a small smile. Though she suggested I perhaps approach it less bluntly. Despite everything, Olivia laughed. I appreciate directness. It's refreshing after a lifetime of my father's evasions. She grew serious again. I would need to consider this carefully. Of course, Flynn agreed immediately. Take all the time you need. The offer stands regardless. As they rode back to the house, Olivia's thoughts whirled. Marriage to Flynn Sutherland would solve her immediate problem, but what then? A marriage of convenience might provide safety, but could she build a life on such a foundation? Would she merely be trading one form of constraint for another? Yet there was something in Flynn's steady presence that inspired trust. His promise to let her lead resonated deeply. The first time in her life, a man had offered her true choice rather than the illusion of it. That evening, after a quiet dinner, Flynn excused himself to check on a mare about to foal, leaving Olivia alone with her thoughts. She wandered the house, taking in the details she'd been too overwhelmed to notice before. The bookshelves filled with everything from practical farming manuals to poetry and novels. The piano in the parlor with sheet music suggesting it was regularly played. The photographs of people who must be the Sutherland parents, their expressions kind and proud. This was a home built on love and respect, nothing like what awaited her with Thornton. And Flynn had promised to expect nothing. She would have safety, security, and most importantly, choice. By the time Flynn returned, Olivia had reached her decision. He found her in the parlor, standing before the fireplace with her back straight and chin lifted. I accept your proposal, she said without preamble, but I have conditions of my own. Flynn removed his hat, a cautious hope in his eyes. I'm listening. This will be a true partnership, she began. I won't be a charity case or a burden. I'll contribute to this ranch in every way I can, he nodded. Agreed. If, after a reasonable time, either of us wishes to dissolve this arrangement, we will do so amicably. Of course. Olivia took a deep breath before voicing her final condition. And if, by chance, feelings should develop between us, we will discuss them honestly. I will not live with secrets or unspoken expectations. Flynn's expression softened. I promise you complete honesty, Olivia, always. Then I accept, she said, extending her hand as if to seal a business arrangement. Flynn took her hand, but instead of shaking it, he held it gently between both of his. Thank you for your trust. I will strive every day to be worthy of it. Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement that whatever began as necessity might grow into something neither had anticipated. Olivia felt it like a physical current passing between their joined hands. They were married 3 days later by a circuit judge who happened to be passing through the area. Alina stood witness, her approval evident in her smile as Flynn and Olivia exchanged simple vows. There was no elaborate ceremony, no celebration beyond a special dinner Alina prepared. Yet as Flynn placed a simple gold band on her finger, his mother's, he'd explained Olivia felt the weight of the moment more keenly than she'd expected. "I, Flynn Sutherland, take you, Olivia Dawson, as my lawful wife," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "I vow to protect your freedom as fiercely as I would my own, to respect your choices, and to be a true partner in whatever life brings us." The traditional vows had been altered at Olivia's request, removing promises of obedience in favor of mutual respect. As she repeated her own vows, promising partnership and honesty, she was struck by how right they felt, not as a concession to necessity, but as a foundation for whatever might come. "By the power vested in me by Dakota territory, I now pronounce you husband and wife," the judge declared. "Mr. Sutherland, you may kiss your bride." Flynn hesitated, his eyes seeking permission. When Olivia gave a slight nod, he leaned forward and pressed a gentle, chaste kiss to her lips. It lasted only a moment, yet Olivia felt its impression long after he pulled away. That evening, true to his word, Flynn showed her to her own room, the same guest room she'd been using. "My room is across the hall if you need anything," he said, standing awkwardly at her doorway. "Good night, Mrs. Sutherland." The name startled her. She was Olivia Sutherland now, at least legally. As she prepared for bed, she wondered what her father would think when he discovered she had not only fled but married. Would he be angry, relieved? Would he understand that she had found a better path than the one he'd chosen for her? Sleep came fitfully that night, her dreams a confused jumble of weddings and escapes. She woke early, habit driving her to the kitchen where she found Alina already preparing breakfast. "Good morning," the older woman greeted her warmly. "How does it feel to be my sister now?" Olivia managed a smile. "Surreal," she admitted. "I'm grateful, but you're wondering if you've leapt from one fire into another," Alina finished for her, understanding in her eyes. "That's natural. Just remember Flynn meant what he said. You have freedom here." Before Olivia could respond, the kitchen door opened and Flynn entered, bringing with him the crisp scent of morning air. He stopped short upon seeing her, a flash of something surprise, pleasure, crossing his face before he composed himself. "Good morning," he said, removing his hat. "I hope you slept well." "Well enough, thank you," Olivia replied, suddenly conscious of her informal appearance in just her day dress, hair still loosely braided for sleep. An awkward silence fell until Alina briskly broke it. "Since we're all awake, you might as well make yourself useful, Flynn. The stove needs more wood." The routine of the day helped ease the strangeness of their situation. After breakfast, Alina suggested Olivia might want to see more of the ranch's operations. "Flynn's heading to the north pasture to check on the new calves," she said. "It's a lovely ride, and you should know the entire property now that it's your home too." Though Olivia suspected Alina's true motive was to give the newlyweds time alone, she appreciated the suggestion. Within the hour, she and Flynn were riding side by side across the rolling prairie, the spring sun warming their backs. "Thank you for yesterday," she said after they'd ridden in comfortable silence for some time. "I know this wasn't how you imagined marriage would come to you." Flynn glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "Few things in life happen as we imagine they will. That doesn't mean they aren't right in their own way. Still, it's a significant sacrifice." "It's not a sacrifice, Olivia," he interrupted gently. "I've gained a partner in my home and work. You're the one who's had to leave everything familiar behind." She considered this. "I left little of value, My mother's memory was the only thing that kept me at that ranch after she died. Everything good there died with her. Flynn's expression softened with compassion. Tell me about her. No one had asked about her mother in years. The simple question opened a floodgate of memories, and Olivia found herself telling Flynn about Elizabeth Dawson, her gentle strength, her love of books and music, how she taught Olivia to stand up for herself while still showing kindness to others. "She sounds remarkable," Flynn said when she finally fell silent. "I see much of her in you already." The compliment warmed her more than it should have. "What about your parents?" she asked. Eleanor mentioned they passed 5 years ago. As they reached the North Pasture, Flynn shared stories of his parents, their journey west from Pennsylvania, the hardships they'd endured establishing the ranch, their unwavering belief in education that had seen both him and Eleanor sent east for schooling despite the financial strain. They believed knowledge was as important as practical skills, he explained as they dismounted near a small pond where cattle were drinking. "Father used to say, 'A man who works only with his hands builds for today. A man who works with both hands and mind builds for generations.'" "A wise philosophy," Olivia observed, watching Flynn check a young calf with gentle, practiced movements. "It served us well," he agreed, straightening. "The double S isn't the biggest spread in the territory, but it's among the most efficient and sustainable." As they continued their tour, Flynn explained his innovations: water management systems, breeding programs, crop rotations that preserved soil health. His passion for the land was evident in every word, and Olivia found herself increasingly impressed by his forward thinking. "Most ranchers just try to squeeze as much as they can from the land before moving on," he explained as they rode back toward the main house. "I believe in working with nature rather than against it." "My father would say that's foolish idealism," Olivia remarked, then winced at how critical it sounded. Flynn didn't seem offended. "Many would. But the results speak for themselves. We survived the drought that bankrupted your father and many others. Our cattle are healthier, our yields higher per acre. It's remarkable," she said sincerely. "You've built something truly worth preserving." He smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. "Perhaps that's why I understood your desire to escape Thornton's plans. Some things are worth more than money or security." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of shared values that transcended their unusual circumstances. The weeks that followed fell into a comfortable pattern. Olivia gradually took over management of the household from Eleanor, who seemed relieved to focus on her true interests in bookkeeping and correspondence. Flynn spent his days working the ranch, but always made time each evening to share the day's events with Olivia over dinner. They developed an easy companionship based on mutual respect and shared responsibilities. Olivia discovered she had a talent for organization that extended beyond the household when Flynn mentioned difficulties tracking breeding lines. She developed a system of record keeping that impressed even Eleanor, who prided herself on efficiency. "You've been a godsend," Eleanor told her one afternoon as they worked together in the garden. "I've never seen the house run so smoothly, and Flynn says your cattle records have already helped him make better breeding decisions." Olivia flushed with pleasure at the praise. "I enjoy the work. It feels good to contribute meaningfully." Eleanor gave her a knowing look. "And how are things between you and my brother? He seems lighter since you came." "We're building a good partnership," Olivia replied carefully, focusing on the weeds she was pulling. "Just a partnership." Eleanor pressed gently. Olivia's cheeks warmed further. "It's complicated, Eleanor. Our arrangement began as a practical solution to a problem. The best marriages often start with practicality and grow into something more." the older woman observed. "I've seen how he looks at you when he thinks no one notices." Before Olivia could respond, a rider approached from the direction of town. Flynn emerged from the barn to meet him, and Olivia watched as they conversed, Flynn's posture growing increasingly tense. When the rider departed, Flynn strode purposefully toward where she and Alina worked. "Harrison Dawson is in town," he announced without preamble, "and Thornton with him. They're asking questions about a young woman matching your description." Olivia's stomach clenched with fear. "How did they trace me here?" "Word travels," Flynn said grimly. "Someone must have seen you when we went to the general store last week." Alina stood, brushing soil from her apron. "What will we do?" Flynn's gaze was steady on Olivia. "That depends on what you want. You're my wife now. Legally, they have no claim on you. We can avoid town until they give up and leave, or, Olivia prompted when he hesitated, "or we can face them directly. Show them you've made your choice and are protected by law from their schemes." The thought of confronting her father and Thornton sent a wave of nausea through Olivia, but she straightened her spine. "I won't hide. I've done nothing wrong." Flynn's expression warmed with approval. "Then we'll ride into town tomorrow, together." That night, Olivia could barely sleep. What would her father say? Would Thornton try to challenge her marriage? As dawn broke, she dressed with particular care in her best dress, one Alina had helped her make, and pinned her hair in a sophisticated style that made her look more mature than her 20 years. Flynn, too, had dressed formally, wearing a clean black suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and the quiet strength that had become her anchor. As they prepared to leave, he took her hands in his. "Whatever happens today, remember you are Olivia Sutherland now, my wife. No one can change that unless we both agree to it." His words steadied her, and she managed a small smile. "I know, thank you, Flynn." The ride to town was tense but not uncomfortable. Flynn kept up a steady conversation about plans for the ranch, the weather, anything to distract her from their mission. By the time Sioux Falls came into view, Olivia felt more prepared to face her past. They left their horses at the livery and walked arm in arm down the main street. Olivia was acutely aware of the curious glances from townspeople. News of her scandalous departure and sudden marriage had clearly spread. When they entered the town's only hotel, the desk clerk's eyes widened in recognition. "Mr. Sutherland," he stammered, "and Mrs. Sutherland. How may I assist you today?" "We understand Harrison Dawson and Edgar Thornton are staying here," Flynn said calmly. "Please inform them we're in the dining room and would like to speak with them." The clerk hesitated, then nodded. "Right away, sir." The hotel dining room was nearly empty at mid-morning. Flynn guided Olivia to a table with a clear view of both entrances, positioning himself so that he could stand easily if needed. They ordered coffee they didn't want and waited in taut silence. It was less than 10 minutes before her father burst into the room, Thornton following close behind. Harrison Dawson had aged years in the month since she'd last seen him. His face was haggard, his clothes rumpled. Edgar Thornton, by contrast, looked precisely as she remembered, coldly controlled, his expensive suit immaculate, his eyes calculating. "Olivia," her father breathed, stopping short at the sight of her. "Thank God you're alive." Flynn rose smoothly to his feet, his hand resting lightly, protectively on Olivia's shoulder. "Mr. Dawson, Mr. Thornton, please join us." Thornton's gaze flickered to Flynn's hand on Olivia's shoulder, then to the gold band on her finger. His expression hardened. "So the rumors are true. You've given yourself to this rancher." Olivia lifted her chin. "I've married Mr. Sutherland, yes. We would have sent announcements, but things happened rather quickly." "This is absurd," Thornton snapped, remaining standing while her father sank heavily into a chair. Whatever game you're playing, girl, it ends now. Your father and I had an arrangement made without my knowledge or consent, Olivia replied evenly. One that is now irrelevant as I am legally wed to another. Her father looked between her and Flynn, confusion and hurt in his eyes. Why, Olivia? Why run away? Why not talk to me? Would you have listened, father? She asked quietly. Would you have canceled your deal with Mr. Thornton if I had begged? His silence was answer enough. Thornton's face had reddened with anger. This marriage is a sham, a convenient fiction to escape your obligations. I don't recognize it. Fortunately, the law doesn't require your recognition, Mr. Thornton, Flynn interjected smoothly. Only that of the judge who performed the ceremony. Judge Patterson, in this case, I believe you know him. Thornton's jaw tightened at the mention of the judge, who was known for his incorruptibility. Dawson, he barked, turning to her father, you promised me your daughter's hand. I expect you to deliver on that promise, or the consequences we discussed will follow. Harrison paled visibly. Edgar, please. It seems she's made her choice. Perhaps we can renegotiate the debt. There is nothing to renegotiate, Thornton snarled. Either return her to fulfill your obligation, or I'll take your ranch and see you in debtor's prison. Olivia gasped at the naked threat, but Flynn's hand tightened reassuringly on her shoulder. Mr. Thornton, he said, his voice deceptively mild, I understand business is business. What if I were to purchase Mr. Dawson's debt from you, at fair market value, of course? This unexpected proposal silenced even Thornton. He stared at Flynn assessingly. The Dawson debt is considerable. You'd risk your own ranch for this woman, for my wife. Without hesitation, Flynn replied, his gaze never wavering. Name your price. A calculating look entered Thornton's eyes. The debt stands at $3,000. I'll accept no less than $4,500. That's usury, Harrison protested weakly. That's business, Thornton corrected coldly. Flynn nodded as if he'd expected this answer. $3,000 for the principal. Another $500 for your trouble, not a penny more. Thornton's eyes narrowed. You're not in a position to negotiate, Sutherland. On the contrary, Flynn countered. Judge Patterson is not only familiar with our marriage but also with your business practices. I believe he would take great interest in exactly how Mr. Dawson's debt increased so dramatically in such a short time. A silent battle of wills played out between the two men. Finally, Thornton's mouth twisted in a grimace of defeat. $3,500, final offer. Done, Flynn agreed immediately. I'll have the bank draw up the papers this afternoon. Thornton rose stiffly. This isn't over, Sutherland. No one crosses me without consequences. His gaze shifted to Olivia, cold and threatening. Remember that, my dear. After he stormed out, Harrison Dawson seemed to deflate, his shoulders slumping in defeat and relief. I don't understand, he said, looking between Flynn and Olivia. Why would you do this? Take on my debt after I... His voice trailed off, unable to finish. After you tried to sell your daughter to clear it, Flynn suggested quietly. I'm not doing it for you, Mr. Dawson. I'm doing it for Olivia, who deserves better than to carry the guilt of your ruin, however justified that outcome might be. Harrison flinched at the blunt assessment. And you, Olivia, are you happy with this arrangement? It was the first time her father had ever asked about her happiness. The irony wasn't lost on her. I am, father. Flynn is a good man who treats me as a partner, not property. Her father nodded slowly, pain and regret evident in his eyes. I'm sorry, Olivia. I thought I was securing your future. I never considered. He trailed off again, unable to articulate the enormity of his misjudgment. I know, she said softly, and she did. Her father was a weak man, not a cruel one, but I've found my own path now. When they parted, Harrison embraced her awkwardly, whispering, "Your mother would be proud of your courage." It was the closest thing to blessing he could offer. As they rode home, the tension of the confrontation gradually eased from Olivia's body. Flynn had been magnificent, calm, controlled, yet unflinching in his protection of her. A question that had been building for weeks finally found its voice. "Did you mean what you said to Thornton? About risking the ranch for me without hesitation?" Flynn glanced at her, his expression serious. "Every word. But why? Our arrangement was for protection, not financial entanglement. You've known me barely a month." He was quiet for so long that Olivia thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, "When I found you on the prairie that day, something told me you would be important in my life. I didn't understand then how important you would become." Her heart quickened at his words. "What are you saying, Flynn?" He reined his horse to a stop, turning to face her fully. "I'm saying that what began as an arrangement to protect you has become much more to me. I find myself thinking of you constantly, your smile, your intelligence, the way you've brought life back into our home." Olivia's breath caught. "Flynn, let me finish," he said gently. "I promised you honesty, and you deserve nothing less. I'm falling in love with you, Olivia Sutherland. I don't expect you to return those feelings, and nothing between us needs to change if you don't. But I couldn't keep letting you believe my actions today were merely about honor or obligation." The sincerity in his eyes was unmistakable. This was no strategic declaration, but a truth he'd carried silently until now. Olivia found herself wondering when exactly the shift had happened, when Flynn had ceased being her protector and become something far more essential to her happiness. "I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't need to say anything," he assured her. "I just wanted you to know where I stand. The choice, as always, remains yours." They rode the rest of the way home in silence, but it was a different kind of silence charged with possibility rather than constraint. As they approached the ranch, Olivia realized with sudden clarity that this place had indeed become home, and the man beside her had become the center of that home. Eleanor took one look at their faces when they returned and tactfully made herself scarce, claiming a sudden need to inventory the root cellar. Alone in the parlor, Olivia finally found the courage to speak the truth she'd been avoiding. "I've been fighting my feelings for you," she confessed, standing by the fireplace where weeks earlier she had accepted his proposal. "I was afraid to trust them, afraid they were born of gratitude rather than genuine affection." Flynn remained by the doorway, giving her space. "And now I understand the difference." She smiled, warmth spreading through her as she embraced the certainty in her heart. "Gratitude doesn't make my pulse race when you enter a room. It doesn't make me lie awake thinking about the sound of your laugh or the way you look at me when you think I don't notice." Hope lit his eyes as he took a cautious step forward. "Olivia, are you saying—" "I'm saying I love you too, Flynn Sutherland." The words felt right, true in a way nothing in her life had felt before. "Not because you rescued me or protected me, but because of who you are, your kindness, your integrity, your respect for the land and all who depend on it." He crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping just short of touching her. "May I kiss you?" As a husband who loves his wife, not as part of an arrangement. In answer, Olivia rose on tiptoe and pressed her lips to his. Unlike their chaste wedding kiss, this one held nothing back. Flynn's arms encircled her waist, drawing her close as the kiss deepened into something that spoke of long, restrained desire finally finding expression. When they finally parted, breathless, Flynn rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since I found you on the prairie," he admitted. She laughed softly. "Even when I was dusty and defiant, especially then," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Your spirit called to something in mine from the first moment." That night, Olivia moved her belongings from the guest room to Flynn's now their bedroom. What followed was a gentle, passionate discovery of each other as husband and wife in truth, as well as name. Flynn was as considerate in lovemaking as he was in all things, ensuring Olivia's comfort and pleasure at every turn. In his arms, she found a completeness she hadn't known was possible. Afterward, lying contentedly in the circle of his embrace, Olivia marveled at the journey that had brought her here. 1 month ago, she had fled a future that promised security without love or freedom. Now she had found both, along with a partnership based on mutual respect and growing affection. "What happens now?" she asked, tracing patterns on his chest. Flynn's fingers combed gently through her hair. "We build a life together, run this ranch as true partners, maybe someday have children if you want them." "I'd like that," she said softly, imagining little ones with Flynn's serious eyes and steadfast nature. "I meant what I said before," he continued. "You lead the way, Olivia. Nothing happens that you don't want or aren't ready for." "Those weren't just words to win your trust, they are my promise for our life together." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him, this remarkable man who had changed her life so completely. "And if what I want is to be your true wife in every sense, to share your work and dreams and build something lasting together," his smile was like sunrise after the longest night, "then I would be the most fortunate man in Dakota Territory in all the world." "I think we're both fortunate," she corrected, settling back into his arms. "We found each other when neither of us was looking." As spring turned to summer, the Double S Ranch thrived under their joint stewardship. Olivia's organizational skills complemented Flynn's practical knowledge, creating efficiencies that improved their productivity and profits. The debt they'd taken on to free her father from Thornton's grip was substantial but manageable given their careful planning. Harrison Dawson sold his struggling ranch and moved west to Oregon, where Olivia's maternal uncle had offered him work. His letters were infrequent but showed a gradual healing of their relationship. He never mentioned Thornton, and neither did she. Eleanor, seeing their happiness, decided to pursue a long-deferred dream of her own. "I'm moving to Denver," she announced over dinner one evening in early autumn. "The Colorado Agricultural College has offered me a position teaching bookkeeping and business management to women." Flynn's surprise quickly gave way to support. "You'll be brilliant at it, Elle, but the Double S won't be the same without you." "It hasn't been the same since Olivia arrived," Eleanor said with a fond smile for her sister-in-law. "In the best possible way, this place needs you two more than it needs me now." When Eleanor departed, the house felt emptier, but also somehow more intimately theirs. Olivia and Flynn settled into a partnership that balanced work and tenderness, duty and pleasure. They expanded the vegetable gardens, added a small orchard, and began selective breeding of horses that would eventually become the Double Estic's most profitable enterprise. Edgar Thornton made good on his threat of consequences the following spring. A mysterious fire destroyed one of their outlying barns, and rumors circulated in town questioning the legitimacy of their marriage. Flynn and Olivia weathered these challenges together, their bond strengthening with each obstacle overcome. "He can't touch what matters," Flynn assured her after they'd spent a day rebuilding fences that had been mysteriously cut. "This land, our home, what's between us, those things are beyond his reach." By their first anniversary, Olivia had news that brought Flynn to his knees with joy when she shared it. "A baby," he whispered, his hand gentle on her still flat stomach. "Our child." "Due in winter," she confirmed, covering his hand with her own. "I thought perhaps we might name him Thomas if it's a boy after your father. Elizabeth for a girl after my mother. Flynn's eyes shone with emotion. Perfect names for the next generation of Sutherlands. Thomas Sutherland arrived during the first snowfall of December, 1879, healthy and strong with his father's dark hair and his mother's determined chin. As Olivia watched Flynn cradle their son with reverent gentleness, she reflected on the strange, winding path that had brought her to this moment of perfect contentment. 2 years earlier, she had been a daughter with no voice in her own future. Now she was a wife whose opinions were valued, a mother whose love would shape a new life, and a woman who had found her own strength through being given the freedom to choose. When Thomas was 6 months old, news reached them that Edgar Thornton had died suddenly of a heart attack. The business empire he'd built through intimidation and manipulation crumbled quickly without his iron hand, revealing the hollow foundation upon which it had been built. "Are you relieved?" Flynn asked as they sat on the porch swing one evening, watching the sunset while their son slept peacefully inside. Olivia considered the question. "I'm at peace," she said finally. "His power over us ended long ago when we refused to let fear dictate our choices." Flynn's arm tightened around her shoulders. "Do you ever regret it? Running away? Marrying a stranger?" She turned to look at him, this man who had begun as her rescuer and become her partner, lover, and dearest friend. "Not for a single moment. You were never really a stranger, Flynn. Somehow my heart recognized you before my mind caught up." He kissed her then, a tender affirmation of the love that had grown between them, not the desperate passion of new romance, but the deeper, richer devotion that comes from building a life together day by day. As darkness fell across the prairie, they remained on the porch, talking softly about their plans for the ranch, for their family, for the years ahead. They spoke as true partners, each listening to the other's thoughts, finding the path forward together. That night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Olivia whispered, "Thank you for letting me lead the way." Flynn's response was to draw her closer. "Always, my love, always." The years passed, bringing changes both expected and surprising. Thomas was joined by a sister, Grace, 3 years later, and eventually by the youngest Sutherland, Michael, who arrived when Olivia was 30. The children grew strong and capable under the loving guidance of parents who modeled partnership in all things. The Double S expanded thoughtfully, becoming known throughout the Dakota Territory and beyond for its innovative practices and quality stock. Flynn and Olivia published articles in agricultural journals, sharing their methods for sustainable ranching that worked with the land rather than against it. Elena visited often, bringing stories of the women she taught, and the changes slowly coming to the West as more women claimed education and independence. She never married, preferring her freedom and work, but she was a beloved aunt to the Sutherland children, who adored her forthright manner and adventurous spirit. By 1889, when Dakota Territory was split into North and South Dakota and granted statehood, the Sutherlands had become respected community leaders in Sioux Falls. Flynn served on the town council, while Olivia established the first lending library, believing as strongly as her husband in the power of education to transform lives. On the 20th anniversary of the day Flynn had found Olivia on the prairie, they rode out together to the spot where they'd first met. Though both now showed signs of age silver threading through their hair, lines of experience marking their faces, their eyes held the same connection that had sparked between them 2 decades earlier. "If I could go back and tell that frightened girl what lay ahead," Olivia mused, gazing across the prairie that had become so familiar, "she would never believe such happiness was possible." Flynn took her hand, his touch still sending warmth through her after all these years. What would you tell her? Olivia smiled, the wisdom of 20 years' partnership in her eyes. That the greatest freedom isn't absence of commitment, but choosing the right person to commit to. That love isn't something that happens to you, but something you build together, choice by choice, day by day. And that sometimes, Flynn added softly, the best journeys begin with running away from what others have planned for you. They returned to the ranch, their home, their legacy as they had lived these 20 years. Side by side, equal partners in all things. The vows Flynn had made that day in the judge's office had been kept faithfully. He had protected her freedom as fiercely as his own, respected her choices, and been a true partner in all that life had brought them. And Olivia had found that, in being given the freedom to lead, she had discovered a path more fulfilling than any she could have imagined on that desperate night when she fled her father's house. Together, they had built not just a successful ranch or a loving family, but a marriage that stood as testament to what was possible when love and respect walked hand in hand. As sunset painted the Dakota sky in brilliant orange and gold, Flynn and Olivia Sutherland sat on their porch, surrounded by the lives they had built together, children grown strong and independent, land tended with care and vision, a community made better by their contributions. Their hands remained clasped between them, the simple gold bands they wore catching the fading light symbols not of ownership or control, but of a choice freely made and joyfully sustained through all the seasons of their lives.